We're reconvening our morning hearing of the House Environment Committee. And I thought that since we jumped in with both feet at the end of last week with Legislative Counsel O'Grady on water quality law, seemed like we needed a moment with both of our primary legislative counselors, Ellen Tchaikovsky and O'Grady, to talk about our areas of jurisdiction and how Legislative Counsel works with us both as individuals, but as a committee would be really helpful. So I turn it over to Ellen Tchaikovsky and Michael O'Grady.
Hello, I'm Ellen Tchaikovsky. That's Tchaikovsky. For those of you I haven't met before, it's less scary than it looks. And I am the Legislative Counsel attorney that handles land use, energy, and climate change. And so within that, land use includes Act 250, municipal zoning, and the billboard law, as well as some of the other policies related to land. So in the past for this committee, I've worked on the 30 by 30 bill, which set a goal to have the state conserve 30% of its land by 2030. And so I work on some of the other provisions related to land. And sometimes Mike and I overlap in a few areas like state parks and rec trails. So it's a little bit of a grab bag, and then I also work on energy, which this committee will not be working on anymore, but I have worked on some of the other bills related to air pollution and climate change as well. But Mike and I overlap on some of these things also. So it's just important to look for our names on the bill if you're looking to ask someone a question.
So I'm Michael O'Grady. We met last week. I do water quality as we discussed last week, and that includes wetlands, discharges, TMDLs, stream alteration, shorelands, etc. I also do solid waste. Solid waste is a big umbrella. It includes things that are intuitive, like how your solid waste management district picks up your trash, the operation of the landfill, but it also includes programs like extended producer responsibility for electronic waste or paint or numerous programs that we have. It also includes toxic substances, which I do share a little bit with Katie McClin and when there's overlap with health. But when there's a general toxic substance regulation, I do it. When there's something specific related to health, she does it. I also do fish and wildlife, hunting, fishing, and trapping, obviously, but also management, endangered species, the trade in covered animal parts.
Get an update on that.
And then I do, Ellen, we kind of overlap on forestry and state parks and that department. So that's what I do. I also do agriculture.
Can one of you talk a little bit about the team that you're on and the other people who are there? Yeah.
Sure. So new to Ledge Council this year is organizing us into a team structure. So Mike and I are on a team with Maria Royal and Damian Leonard. Maria handles a fun grab bag of issues, including telecommunications, broadband, utility regulation, as well as banking and insurance. And Damian has moved from his prior role as the labor and employment attorney to transportation. And so Damian is our team lead. I don't think we have a lot of specifics how this may impact you, other than it's sort of to help us stay organized and assist each other if needed. But we're still keeping our individual topic areas.
And technically, there's a vacancy on our team because we were looking to hire somebody to help me with ag and help out with some subject matter. But we just didn't. We didn't get a lot of applicants. And the applicants we did perceive were not, we did not choose to. Ultimately, we'll probably look to fill that position in the future.
So if you could speak to a little bit of how you work with us as individuals and then as a committee. We covered that a little yesterday with grid and with the chairs, vice chairs, but I thought it would be helpful for the whole committee to hear that.
Legislative Council is the law firm for the General Assembly, and hopefully some of the new members heard this in your orientation. We assist you in legal research and legal drafting. And so if you're interested in drafting a bill, that would be under one of the topics Mike or I would draft. You can come to us, or if you wanted to submit a request, you could submit it to any member of Legislative Council, and then it would make its way to us, and we would assist you in the drafting. And during that process, whatever you say to us or whatever you're working on is confidential between us, unless you'd like us to share it with another member. But we will keep it confidential unless and until you actually introduce it on the House floor. And then when this committee starts doing its work, you'll have bills on your wall, hopefully soon. And whoever drafted it will come and assist you in working on the bill. We'll come in and we'll do the walkthrough with you, go over the initial version of the bill, walk through the language, tell you what it means and what it's trying to do. Then you'll hear testimony, and then you'll have us back in to do markup, which is where we help you work through developing amendments to that bill. And during that time, we work to assist the whole committee in its process. There can be opportunities during that process for you to have confidential conversations on that bill or ask us privately in our office if you'd like more information. But generally, we will be working to serve the committee. And so you still will have your ability to speak to your lawyer. We are your lawyer during that process. You can come talk to us and we'll be able to assist you and answer any questions offline if you'd like to do that. Or when we come into committee, we can also field your questions then too. And then if you pass a bill out, we will then, whatever we drafted, take over to the Senate and work with them on the same process over there. So we do follow our bills wherever they go in the building. If they go to another committee, we go with them as well.
So I'd like to add a couple of things. When you put in a draft request, it still has to go through our assignment process. So you might put in your draft request on a Tuesday afternoon. Well, we had our staff meeting on Monday. That request isn't going to be assigned until the following Monday. So there will be some lag in the response from Ledge Council on drafting because it's just the way that it happens. Also, when you put in a draft request, you can tell us to work with people. You can say, I want you to work with an advocate. I want you to work with an agency. I want you to work with a constituent. In order to get what you want substantively to approve. When you're in here as a committee, as Ellen says, we serve you as a whole and as individuals, but there are some things that we're not going to do for you. If there's a bill on the wall and the chair's decided that she's not going to take that bill up and she's not going to work on it, we're not going to work with a member of the committee to amend that bill. Because if that bill has traction from the committee chair, we're not going to work on a bill that's been introduced. Because it really is something that we have to prioritize our time. And we're just not going to work on something that isn't going to see any kind of action in the committee. And the other thing is when you're out on the floor, when you're reporting, we will support you as best as we possibly can. We can't write your floor speech, but we can write an overview of the bill for you. We can do a section by section for you. I've worked with this committee for a long time in the past, and recently we've kind of there's been a reporter, but there's also been somebody that's on their computer, so I can email that person and say, hey, you have to tell this to the reporter, or send a note to the reporter. And I like that because it's hard for us sometimes to go to the doorkeeper and hand them a note, and the doorkeeper is looking at the page from across the room, and the page comes over and the page doesn't know who you are because it's her first week, and she's walking around the entire, and I'm an email to the member who can then say, hey, pass a note directly to the report. I like that process, and I hope you like that process as well. And we're always there if you just want to take a break. You can ask for a recess to consult with counsel. We can't come onto the floor. We used to be able to go onto the floor, but Betsy Ann doesn't let us go onto the floor anymore during recesses. But you can come over and we can talk to you about a question that you might receive. We'll also work with you before you even go out on the floor to answer questions, kind of do a little mock with you. Not a lot of people take advantage of that, but it's something that we will do.
Yeah. I just want to kind of put an exclamation point on the fact that our legislative counselors are a shared resource. There's 180 potential people going to either one of these two people on a topic related to our areas of jurisdiction. And so just holding that awareness, I mean, you're on a committee that's in their area of jurisdiction. It's highly likely you might talk to them more than some other members from other committees, but just being aware of that as you're utilizing their time is really important to remember.
And I'd like to add something. So sometimes that message gets misconstrued as though we don't have time for you, which is not true. If you have a question and you need something from us, we can help you. But we do ask that you are thoughtful in your requests of us. If you on a side or thinking about a bill and you want to know what all 50 other states have already done, if that's only like a whim of yours, that's going to be like a huge project for me. But if it is something that's really important to the work of this committee, we will absolutely do that for you. But having some judgment of like, is this going to be something I'm actually going to try to work on, or is this just something I thought would be fun to know about? There's some discretion on that.
Representative Pritchard.
Yeah, and so what's the best way for us to go about doing that process? Do we email you to set up a time to do that? Do we walk over to see you?
Either is fine with me.
Yeah.
Email you, it's convenient for you because you can send it at any time and we will respond sometimes after hours, sometimes not. That's another thing. There are certain members that think they have 24-hour access to us. And
We don't.
yeah.
Hard stop.
But some of your new members have already been calling me, coming over, sitting there, talking through things. That works just as well.
Yep, if you see us in the hallway, if I'm not physically running, which sometimes happens, feel free to stop me and say hi. And then just so you do know, so oftentimes during the session, we will be in committee most of the time you're in committee. There will be off days, like this morning, I did not have a morning hearing, which is amazing. But like next week, I will probably be in committee the same amount of time as you are. So if you email me and you don't hear from me for hours, that's pretty normal. Because I will be usually testifying before a committee if I'm not in here. House Energy will be wanting to see me, Senate Natural Resources. So we are often in committee as much as you are. And so we may not be available in that moment, but we'll work to find a time with you or answer your question when we can.
Thank you.
A follow-up on that is we're both really busy, and so we may not be here for witness testimony. Honestly, it's kind of I won't say it's a priority of mine, but I think I don't spend a lot of time listening to witnesses in committee. I will sit in my office and draft and be on Zoom and listen to you then. And you can talk to me that way, but it's really more effective, in my opinion, for me to listen that way than to sit here because I can't do as much work here than I can do in my office and listen.
You just said Zoom. That would mean we would know you were in the room. And if we had a question, we could ask you a question.
Like tomorrow I have to work remotely, but I'll probably listen to some of this testimony. So.
And on that, so we have new offices. We have moved to 2 Aiken, which is the green building that is diagonal from here. So Mike and I are both on the 2nd floor. Our offices are there. You can, I don't mind if you try to swing by unannounced, that's totally fine with me, but I may not be there because I may be in committee, so but you are definitely able to come set up a time with me if you'd like.
Representative Bartholomew.
Well, that was one of my questions, where they moved. My other question, you went over the areas you cover, but you didn't specify which of those areas we, obviously ag is not us, and forestry, parks and recreation, none of those, or energy, none of that's us, right?
Sure, so I did pull up your the House rule that changed the jurisdiction of your committee. So your committee jurisdiction now says conservation and development. And I think that does include both conservation and development, as you know, but that's also the title of Title 10. So things within the conservation and development title. Climate change mitigation, land resources, air, water, fish and wildlife, solid waste management, and other similar policies.
We do waste management. That gets at my question. Okay.
And why do you say you don't have parks?
I thought in parks and recreation still under ag.
So it does say under ag parks, state parks and lands. And I think sometimes the line is blurry on that.
Okay.
Natural resources could be construed to be timber harvesting. There's some gray line that your leadership is going to have to work out.
Representative Austin.
If we serve on a planning commission and during those hearings, maybe the planner for the town talks about some tweaks they would like to have made to current or more recent legislation, do we bring those to you, or is there another process for that to be heard?
You're going to serve your constituents and you're going to put in a bunch of requests based on what your constituency or what your town wants. That's fine.
Okay.
So we are it's a steady dialogue among committees on the House side for areas of jurisdictional kind of overlap, or like sometimes, just sort of shared areas come up. And one of the things that we're going to try to do both with our House colleagues, but also our Senate colleagues, is we're going to try out and see how it goes. Like, if Ellen is presenting on the Global Warming Solutions Act, which is happening, not this afternoon, anyway, another day, and another committee had already booked her for that. So we're going to watch on Zoom, which would we still be able to ask questions?
I think so. I think you maybe want to talk to the.
Yeah, we need to work.
About how you. Want.
So we're going to try that out so that we, again, there's a balance point because we want to be able to ask our questions and have discussion in this committee, but sharing that presentation so Ellen doesn't have to give it 4 times around the building in one biennium or session. That's just, we'll see how that goes.
Less running.
If one of you also would be able to, we don't have direct overlap with the committees in the Senate either, which actually it's probably not worth it. But if you're interested in how that works, it's just go to the legislative webpage, the committees tab, and look and see. Senate Natural covers a lot more of what like our committee last year did with the energy portions of it. But as noted, there's been some changes. He added the Energy and Technology Committee. And then the Senate also has created a similar committee. I don't know what they're calling it. They have a technology data, don't they? Oh, well, look.
That's what I'm aware of.
You told me.
You didn't create any new committees, so I don't know if they just reassigned it, but I don't.
Oh, maybe they reassigned. All right. Well, anyway, it's worth looking. Any further thoughts from either of you on this?
On general service or like, I mean, that's it. You're gonna take some time. You people are gonna take some time to acclimate to us and acclimate to how you want to do your job. There are some people that don't read their email. There are some people that respond to all of their email. And I know that because I do Public Records Act requests, and some of your colleagues respond to every single email they get, and it's crazy.
So you could touch on public records requests and FOIAs and how legislators can manage that.
Sure. So you are all your own independent constitutional officer, which means that you are your own little public agency. And anyone can submit a Public Records Act request to you for any record that's produced or acquired in the course of legislative business. And you will likely get requests over your time here. When you get a request, you should contact Tucker Anderson. He's the Public Records Officer for Legislative Council for the General Assembly. He will help you deal with that request, how to respond, give you options, talk to you about what records you can withhold under exemptions or privileges, talk to you about searching your mailboxes. I say boxes because the Supreme Court has said it doesn't matter if you are just working on your legislative email or legislative infrastructure. Those communications that are produced or acquired in the course of your legislative business on your phone, on your personal computer, on your iPad, they all can be subject to the request. Your text. So if you got really sensitive text, you might want to manage them expediently. And things of that nature can be subject to a request. And we will work with you to fulfill that. Sometimes the entire committee gets a request. And in those situations, the request is usually very broad and it takes a long time to address. We will work with you same way we will work with individual legislators, but it just takes a little bit longer. Last year, I had to handle a request to Ways and Means for everything related to the proposed tax on short-term rentals from every single one of the members. There are a lot of records on that. So it can take some time.
So it's fair to say that all of your devices and all of your accounts, if it's related to your legislative work, they're subject to FOIA.
We can search your legislative accounts through IT. They have a program to do that. It's very quick. It only takes a day or two. So it kicks back responsive records. We then review the responsive records for ones that are actually responsive. The example I give of that is like, there was a request for everything related to Vermont Yankee. And what got kicked back were things like Yankee Pot Bros, Yankee Swap, Red Sox versus Yankees, Yankee Magazine. We can get rid of them like automatically because they're not responsive. So then that's what we do first. And we look at things that are potentially subject to exemption or withholding. And then we talk to you. And we advise you on what is responsive and what options you have.
But they're not all, what are the ones that are not? What are the ones that are confidential?
So anything that you communicate between Ledge Council and or JFO that you want to maintain confidentiality over, you can assert a couple of privileges or exemptions there. Communications between yourselves, there's called the legislative privilege. You have the ability to talk amongst yourselves about legislative issues, and that is privileged. You
They're not
can,
as quorum. So we don't debate policy via email as a 6 or more.
and there are over 200 other exemptions. Most of them aren't really targeted at you, they're more subject matter. But there are a couple that are very important when you're talking to your constituents. One is called the personal information exemption, because your constituents are going to tell you all kinds of things that they probably shouldn't be telling you. Their income, their family relations, things that have happened to them that are very sensitive. And we use that personal information exemption to redact that information because it really was not intended to be shared with the public, and the privacy interest of the person outweighed the interest in transparency.
Do members have any further questions?
I have something unrelated.
Okay, go ahead.
So I don't think I said this directly when I started. We're nonpartisan. And so we work on topic areas, but we work on all sides of an issue. And so when we come here, our job is to provide you information on what is legal, what's in the law and what's in the Constitution. So we're not going to, assist you with partisan arguments or make partisan arguments unless you ask us, what is the argument on this side? We're here to provide you factual information and legal information. The other thing Mike sort of touched on is when we're doing amendments, you as an individual member can ask for an amendment to a bill when it gets to the floor, and we'll assist you with that confidentially if you'd like, or you can, include other legislators, but we will assist you with that confidentially. But when you're working on a bill in committee, when you're doing markup, generally, as Mike mentioned, the amendment is coming from the committee. And if the committee is not working on that bill, we're probably not going to assist you with an amendment because the committee is working on that bill at that time. If at some point, though, an individual member of the committee wants to make a proposal to the committee, it's important for you to give your chair a heads up. We can talk more about how to do this, but if I'm working on an amendment for the committee and then 5 of you want your own individual amendments, we're going to need to talk about whether or not you want to bring them first to the committee without any before I draft it, or if you're going to need me to draft it first, just because if I'm pulled in many directions at the same time, that could get a little complicated. And so letting the chair know if you're looking for specific changes to a bill that you're working on, or if you want to explore certain changes, will be important.
Follow up on that. There are many reasons to ask for an amendment from us, some of which are sincere and substantive. And in those situations, I would recommend you have some courtesy for the committee and the chair, and you let them know that you're going to have an amendment. In those instances, I think you have a better chance of getting your substantive, sincere amendment passed when you do that. But sometimes you just want to make a point, and it's not about your desire to actually make the change. You just want to get up on the floor and say, this is what I want, and this is why. You don't think it's actually going to happen. So that is one of that's a facet of the job that I think I struggle with a little bit, when you just want to make your point. Like, how much time should I put in to something that you just want to make your point? Most of the time I'm trying to draft to the best of my ability. But if you're just out there to make a point, I'll probably talk to you a little bit about what you need to do that.
Alternative ways to make your point. Yeah. Yeah, Representative Moore.
Yes. I have a question about the FOIA request. Does that include just communications, or what about notes that we've taken? I mean, I take, physical notes, I take a lot of electronic notes because I can't remember everything. Do FOIA requests include all the notes that I didn't communicate to anybody?
So the universe of records is pretty much any way that you can collect data. But your notes, your personal notes, likely would fall under an exemption as legislative privilege. So yeah, any way that you collect, we used to have these huge reel-to-reel tapes that looked like, the computers in the 50s. And that was a record. We had to search those for responsive material. And so any way to collect the data for it, yes.
Not sure I fully understood the answer on my notes.
Your notes are a record. And so here's the first step. The record isn't subject to the Public Records Act. So there are certain records that are produced by the legislature that aren't even subject to the Public Records Act, like records in front of the ethics panel, because that has been a decision you made, that type of information needs to be managed by the ethics panel in the way that they believe until it's public. That's not even subject to a public, we don't even respond to that. Right? Your email with your family about when you're going out to dinner, that's not a record. It's not subject to the Public Records Act. You don't need to even respond to that. Records that are within the course of the legislative sphere, they are records and they're subject to the Public Records Act. We have to respond to that. We have to tell a responder whether you're withholding it. But we then say why you're withholding it. And one of the reasons you can withhold is legislative privilege. It's information produced or acquired in the course of your legislative work.
And that's the likely exemption that would apply to personal notes.
Yes.
Okay. I think I understand yours. Thank you very much.
But it's also your choice what you want to, you always have the ability to say, I'm giving everything. Now that comes with the caveat, when you have a record that has 17 other people on it, you have to think about what that means for the 17 other people.
Thank you very much for coming in and thank you. You both again soon. Members, I just want to point out that we are going to start again at 1 and the House floor is at 3. We're going to try to make sure that our afternoon testimony wraps up by 2:45 so that you have time to be on time before. See you again this afternoon at 1. Our learn for the morning.